Ellie returned to Willowbrook, her heart racing with excitement. She wanted to tell everyone about Ember, the gentle dragon who loved to bake. But as she stepped into the village square, she saw the frightened faces of the villagers. News of her trip to the Misty Peaks had spread, and they thought she was lucky to have survived. "Ellie, you shouldn't have gone near that monster," cried the baker, Mr. Krusty. "We must protect you." "No, you don't understand," Ellie began. "Ember isn't a monster. She's kind and she bakes cakes." The villagers erupted into nervous murmurs. A dragon baking cakes? Absurd. But Ellie refused to give up. She asked Ember to come to the village to prove her kindness. Ember, though hesitant, agreed, deciding to bring her best creation, a towering caramel cake covered in golden sprinkles. As Ember flew down the mountain, her massive wings casting shadows over the village, the people panicked. They grabbed tools and hid behind carts. But Ember didn't roar or attack. Instead, she landed gently in the square and carefully placed the cake on a table. "Hello," Ember said shyly. "I heard you like sweets." The villagers stared in awe at the cake. It smelled heavenly. Slowly, Ellie approached and cut a slice. She handed it to Mr. Krusty, who reluctantly took a bite. His eyes widened. "This is the best cake I've ever tasted." One by one, the villagers tried the cake, their fear melting away with every bite. By sunset, Ember was surrounded by smiling villagers, laughing and sharing stories. For the first time, she felt welcome. But not everyone was convinced. In the shadows, a skeptical farmer named Grumble muttered, "This doesn't mean we can trust her yet." Ellie returned to Willowbrook, her heart racing with excitement. She wanted to tell everyone about Ember, the gentle dragon who loved to bake. But as she stepped into the village square, she saw the frightened faces of the villagers. News of her trip to the Misty Peaks had spread, and they thought she was lucky to have survived. "Ellie, you shouldn't have gone near that monster," cried the baker, Mr. Krusty. "We must protect you." "No, you don't understand," Ellie began. "Ember isn't a monster. She's kind and she bakes cakes." The villagers erupted into nervous murmurs. A dragon baking cakes? Absurd. But Ellie refused to give up. She asked Ember to come to the village to prove her kindness. Ember, though hesitant, agreed, deciding to bring her best creation, a towering caramel cake covered in golden sprinkles. As Ember flew down the mountain, her massive wings casting shadows over the village, the people panicked. They grabbed tools and hid behind carts. But Ember didn't roar or attack. Instead, she landed gently in the square and carefully placed the cake on a table. "Hello," Ember said shyly. "I heard you like sweets." The villagers stared in awe at the cake. It smelled heavenly. Slowly, Ellie approached and cut a slice. She handed it to Mr. Krusty, who reluctantly took a bite. His eyes widened. "This is the best cake I've ever tasted." One by one, the villagers tried the cake, their fear melting away with every bite. By sunset, Ember was surrounded by smiling villagers, laughing and sharing stories. For the first time, she felt welcome. But not everyone was convinced. In the shadows, a skeptical farmer named Grumble muttered, "This doesn't mean we can trust her yet." After Ember's visit to the village, most of the villagers began warming up to her. They invited her to return, asking if she could teach them some of her baking secrets. But not everyone was convinced. Farmer Grumble, an old and grouchy man, couldn't shake his doubts. "A dragon is still a dragon," he muttered to himself. "No amount of cake will change that." Determined to uncover the truth, Grumble decided to follow Ember back to her cave. He packed a small bag with tools and quietly left the village under the cover of night. When he arrived at the Misty Peaks, Grumble hid behind a boulder near Ember's cave and peered inside. He saw Ember humming softly as she prepared her next recipe. The cave was filled with the warm glow of her fire, the scent of spices, and shelves lined with jars of honey, nuts, and dried fruits. To Grumble's surprise, Ember didn't seem dangerous at all. But then, as Ember reached for a jar of cinnamon, a gust of wind blew into the cave, knocking it over. The jar shattered, and the dragon froze, staring at the mess with dismay. "Oh no," Ember muttered, trying to pick up the shards with her claws. Grumble, seeing her struggle, stepped out of hiding. "Here," he said gruffly, kneeling to help. Ember gasped but didn't move as Grumble cleaned up the mess. "Why didn't you just burn it away?" he asked, still skeptical. Ember smiled softly. "Because fire isn't always the answer. Sometimes care and patience are better." Grumble was struck by her words. As they worked together, Ember shared her dream of opening a bakery where everyone, human and dragon, could enjoy her creations. Grumble began to realize she wasn't just a dragon. She was a friend waiting to be discovered. By the time they finished, Grumble's heart had softened, though he still grumbled, "I'll believe it when I see that bakery of yours." Word of Ember's kindness spread through Willowbrook, and the villagers began asking for her recipes. Ellie, now Ember's biggest supporter, suggested they hold a baking lesson in the village square so Ember could teach everyone her secrets. At first, Ember hesitated. "What if I scare someone again?" she asked Ellie. But Ellie reassured her, saying, "They've seen your heart, Ember. It's time they see your talent too." On the morning of the lesson, the village square buzzed with excitement. Tables were set up with bowls, rolling pins, and piles of ingredients. Ember arrived, carefully carrying baskets of fresh supplies. The children ran up to greet her, while adults nervously smiled, still getting used to a dragon strolling through their town. Ember began by showing the villagers how to make her famous honey spice cookies. She demonstrated how to mix the ingredients, her giant claws surprisingly gentle as she worked. The children laughed as they tried to mimic her, getting flour everywhere. Even Farmer Grumble showed up, muttering, "I'm just here to make sure she doesn't burn the place down." As the ovens filled with delicious smells, the villagers started to relax and enjoy themselves. Ember moved from table to table, giving tips and encouraging everyone. When the cookies were done, the villagers eagerly took their first bites. The combination of sweet honey and warm spices melted in their mouths. "Delicious," Mr. Krusty exclaimed. "Better than anything I've ever baked." The children cheered, and even Grumble admitted, "Not bad for a dragon." Ember smiled, her golden scales glowing in the afternoon sun. For the first time, she felt truly accepted. But as the day ended, Ellie noticed something troubling. In the distance, storm clouds were gathering over the mountains. As the villagers celebrated the success of Ember's baking lesson, the storm clouds that had been gathering over the Misty Peaks suddenly rolled in faster than anyone expected. The sky darkened, and a sharp wind swept through the village, carrying with it the scent of rain and thunder. "We need to secure everything," Farmer Grumble shouted, his gruff voice cutting through the rising panic. Villagers scrambled to pack up tables and ovens while children clung to their parents. Ember, sensing their fear, spread her giant wings. "I'll help," she said firmly, her voice steady and calm. With a powerful leap, she soared into the sky, circling above the village to assess the incoming storm. The first raindrops began to fall, quickly turning into a heavy downpour. Trees swayed wildly in the wind, and the river running through the village started to rise. A bolt of lightning struck dangerously close, splitting an old oak tree near the square. Ellie, standing beside Grumble, pointed to the fields. "The crops. They'll be flooded if the river overflows." Hearing this, Ember swooped down and landed near the riverbank. Using her massive claws, she began digging a trench to divert the water. Villagers gathered around to help, inspired by her bravery. Together, they worked against the storm, their combined efforts saving the crops from being washed away. As the trench held and the water receded, a loud crack of thunder startled everyone. A heavy gust of wind toppled a cart, pinning a young boy underneath. Without hesitation, Ember dashed over and carefully lifted the cart with her claws, freeing the boy. He hugged her tightly, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you, Ember." When the storm finally passed, the village was muddy but safe. The villagers looked at Ember with new respect. She wasn't just kind or talented, she was their protector. Grumble, wiping mud off his face, muttered, all right. Maybe dragons aren't so bad after all. The morning after the storm, the village of Willowbrook was filled with the sounds of rebuilding. Fallen branches were cleared, fences repaired, and muddy streets cleaned. Despite the hard work ahead, the villagers were in good spirits. Thanks to Ember's help, the worst of the damage had been avoided. Ellie and Farmer Grumble decided to visit Ember in her cave to thank her personally. They carried a basket of fresh bread, honey, and jam as a gift of gratitude. When they arrived, they found Ember curled up by her fire, her scales dimmer than usual. She looked tired but happy. "Ember," Ellie said, placing the basket on a table, "the village wouldn't have made it through the storm without you." Ember's eyes sparkled, and she smiled gently. "I only did what I could. It feels nice to be part of something bigger, to help." Grumble cleared his throat, awkwardly shifting his weight. "You're not so bad, dragon. In fact, you're a good neighbor." The words felt heavy on his tongue, but Ember's grin made it worthwhile. As they shared bread and honey, Ember revealed more about her life in the Misty Peaks. She had always been alone, not because she wanted to be, but because dragons were often misunderstood. Ellie, eager to change that, had an idea. "Ember, what if we build your bakery right here in the village?" she suggested. "It can be a place where everyone works together, bakes together, and learns from you." Ember's eyes widened. "Me? Have a bakery in Willowbrook?" Her voice was a mix of excitement and disbelief. "Do you think the villagers would really want that?" "They would," Grumble said with a nod. "After what you did last night, they'd be fools not to." With her heart brimming with hope, Ember agreed to the plan. They decided to announce the idea at the village meeting that evening. Ellie, Grumble, and Ember worked together to prepare a small display of Ember's best baked goods as a way to win over any lingering skeptics. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the villagers of Willowbrook gathered in the square for a special meeting. The air buzzed with curiosity as whispers of Ember's potential bakery spread. Lanterns cast a warm glow, and tables were set up displaying Ember's delicious baked goods: honey spice cookies, caramel cakes, and golden berry tarts. Ellie stood at the center of the square, her small frame radiating confidence. "We've gathered here tonight because Ember, the dragon who helped us survive the storm, has a dream. She wants to open a bakery right here in Willowbrook. A bakery where we can work and bake together." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Although many villagers had warmed up to Ember, some still hesitated. Farmer Grumble stepped forward, surprising everyone. "I know I've been the biggest skeptic, but I've seen what Ember's capable of, not just her strength, but her kindness. She's earned her place here." Ember, standing behind Ellie, lowered her massive head and spoke gently. "I don't want to be a burden. I only want to share my love of baking with all of you. If you'll allow me, I promise to bring joy and flavor to your lives." The villagers murmured among themselves. "But where would she stay?" asked the blacksmith. "What if her fire is dangerous?" wondered another. Ellie raised her hand to quiet them. "We've already thought about that. Ember's bakery can be built on the edge of the village, near the river. It's safe, and it's close enough for her to be part of our community." To settle the matter, the village elder, a wise woman named Matilda, suggested a vote. "Raise your hands if you agree to let Ember build her bakery." Slowly, hands began to rise. Children raised theirs eagerly, followed by the younger families who had already tasted Ember's treats. Even the cautious villagers hesitated, then nodded and raised their hands. When Grumble lifted his hand, it was clear the majority had spoken. Matilda smiled. "It's decided, then." "Ember, welcome to Willowbrook." The square erupted in cheers. Ember's golden scales shimmered in the lantern light, and her eyes glistened with joy. She couldn't wait to start building her bakery, her new home. Weeks passed, and the edge of Willowbrook was transformed into a bustling construction site. Villagers worked side by side with Ember to build her bakery, a grand structure with a thatched roof, wooden beams, and a large, fireproof stone oven big enough for her to bake. Children painted cheerful signs, and the blacksmith crafted a dragon-shaped bell for the front door. When the bakery was finally finished, it was time for the grand opening. Villagers gathered around, eager to see Ember's dream come to life. The scent of freshly baked bread and sweet treats filled the air as Ember emerged from the bakery, wearing a flour-dusted apron that Ellie had sewn for her. "Welcome to Ember's Hearth," Ellie announced proudly. "This isn't just a bakery, it's a place for everyone to come together, to share stories, laughter, and the joy of baking." Ember smiled and said, "Every loaf, every cake, and every cookie here is made with kindness and care. Thank you for trusting me and letting me be part of your village." The villagers cheered, and the doors to the bakery were opened. Inside, the tables were laden with golden loaves of bread, honey-dipped cookies, and towering cakes. Everyone grabbed a treat and celebrated together, their laughter and happiness filling the air. Farmer Grumble, holding a plate of warm cookies, walked over to Ember. "Well, Dragon," he said with a rare smile, "you've done something special here. You've shown us what kindness can do." Ember nodded, her golden scales glowing warmly in the light. "And you've all shown me that even a dragon can find a home when surrounded by friends." Moral lesson: the story of Ember teaches us that kindness, courage, and understanding can break even the strongest barriers of fear and prejudice. By opening our hearts and giving others a chance, we create a world where everyone, no matter how different, can belong and thrive. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story of Ember, the kind dragon, please like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. What lesson did you learn from Ember's journey? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode of magical adventures and inspiring stories. Let's spread kindness together.